What three parts does the brainstem consist of? A. Pons, cerebellum, medulla. B. Corpus callosum, medulla, and cerebellum. C. Medulla, pons, and midbrain. D. Midbrain, cerebellum, pons. The answer is C. Medulla, pons, and midbrain. The brainstem consists of the medulla, the pons, and the midbrain. The cerebellum is an outgrowth posterior to the pons. The corpus callosum is the broad bundle of neural fibers that attaches the left hemisphere of the brain to the right hemisphere. Olfaction is what form of sensory reception? A. Chemoreception. B. Thermoreception. C. Mechanoreception. D. Baroreception. The answer is A. Chemoreception. Olfaction is form of chemoreception, or a translation of a chemical signal into an action potential. Smells are triggered by molecules of volatile chemicals that trigger chemoreceptors in the epithelium of the olfactory cleft. Olfactory nerves travel through what structure in order to enter the skull? A. The cristagalli. B. The cribriform plate. C. The ethmoidal labyrinth. D. The perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. The answer is B. The cribriform plate. The olfactory nerves travel through the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone. The grooves of the cribriform plate support the olfactory bulb, and the bone is perforated by many tiny foramen for transmission of the olfactory nerves from the epithelium of the nasal cavity to the olfactory bulb. The other structures listed are all bony features of the ethmoid bone, but they do not allow the passage of olfactory nerves. Approximately how many action potentials must be triggered in an olfactory receptor neuron in order for a smell to be detected? A. 40 to 50. B. 1. C. 200 to 250. D. 80 to 100. E. 2 to 5. The answer is A. 40 to 50. Olfactory receptor neurons require 7 to 8 molecules of a volatile odorant to trigger an action potential, and approximately 40 action potentials must be triggered in an olfactory receptor neuron in order for a smell to be detected. What type of cell is embedded in the olfactory epithelium? A. Olfactory sensory neurons. B. Supporting cells. C. Basal cells. D. All of these. The answer is D. all of these. There are three types of cells embedded in the olfactory epithelium: basal cells, supporting cells, and olfactory sensory neurons. All three of these cells play a significant role in the sense of smell, though the olfactory sensory neurons are the only cell type that actually respond to chemical stimuli. All of the following parts of the brain are involved in olfactory sense and recognition except which of the following? A. The insula. B. The arcuate nucleus. C. The piriform complex. D. The orbitofrontal cortex. The answer is D. The arcuate nucleus. The olfactory perception is managed by several parts of the brain, the primary areas being the piriform cortex, the insula, and the orbitofrontal cortex. Other lesser involved areas of the brain include the anterior olfactory nucleus, the amygdala, the entorhinal cortex, and the olfactory tubercle. The arcuate nucleus is an area of the hypothalamus that is involved in regulation of hunger and satiety. Where is the olfactory epithelium is located? A. The eustachian tube. B. The inferior turbinate. C. The sphenoid sinus. D. The roof of the nasal cavity. The answer is D. The roof of the nasal cavity. The olfactory epithelium is located at the roof of the nasal cavity in a relatively large area that includes the superior turbinate and the superior portion of the nasal septum. There are no specialized olfactory cells on the inferior turbinates, and no olfactory receptors in either the sphenoid sinus of the eustachian tube. Which of the following tastes has the lowest detection threshold? A. Sour. B. Sweet. C. Salty. D. Bitter. The answer is D. Bitter. The human tongue can detect bitter flavors at concentrations as low as 8 micromolars per liter. In comparison, in the average person the detection threshold for sucrose is 10 millimoles per liter. The reason for the extreme sensitivity of the human tongue to bitter flavors may be protective, as many poisonous or toxic substances have a bitter taste. All taste buds of the tongue are located in what structures? A. In the palatoglossal arch. B. In the apex. C. In the terminal sulcus. D. In the papillae. The answer is D. In the papillae. Taste buds are located in the papillae of the tongue, a group of structures lining the surface of the tongue from the apex to the base. These papillae are also present in the cheek, the soft palate, the epiglottis, and the upper esophagus. They are not present in the palatoglossal arch. Of the 4 types of lingual papillae, which is the only type that does not contain taste buds? A. Filiform papillae. B. Foliate papillae. C. Circumvallate papillae. D. Fungiform papillae. The answer is A. Filiform papillae. Filiform papillae, the most numerous of the lingual papillae, is the only type that does not contain taste buds. Rather, they serve to move food toward the esophagus, cleanse the interior of the mouth, and spread saliva onto food and mucous membranes.